Well, good morning to you. 6 minutes after the top of the hour right now. I am Bill Martinez. We're live with Dr. John Lott, the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center and the author of Gun Control Myths. Good morning, John. How are you?
Doing great, Bill. Good to talk to you.
Well, always good to be talking to you. Once again, you're here to help clear the record. I mean, the American people are being worked. We're all a bunch of mushrooms, is what the government would want us to believe. Just keep us in the dark, feed us with manure. But thank God for you, Dr. John, that you come bearing the truth, especially when it comes to crime statistics and how this government is measuring this in order. I think in part of it, the diabolic part of this is to protect blue states and the poor governance of these blue governors. What do you think?
Well, I think it's also to kind of boost the Democrats' chances nationally of
Yes.
winning election. And I also think that it's done in order to hide crime by illegal aliens. I mean, you had Pete Buttigieg just recently when he was on Fox News Sunday,
Mhm.
starting off by saying, attacking Republicans for claiming that illegal aliens were responsible for crime, and then making the claim that crime was rising under Trump and falling under Biden, so it couldn't be related to illegal aliens. And of course, even in Tim Walz's first introductory speech that he gave in Philadelphia, he made the same claim again that crime had been rising under Trump and that it was falling under Biden. So, you know, that's false.
Mhm.
Uh, and
Well,
what
we'll
people need to
break that down,
understand.
John. John, I'm sorry. Break that down in simple language so people understand what's going on, because we look at the numbers. I mean, gosh, I thought it was very compelling, the EDA, the Everyday American stories of citizens and families impacted by illegal aliens coming to the country, killing their children. And this is just a microcosm of the pain and the devastation that's been exacerbated because of the open borders. But help people understand what the real numbers are as best you can with Trump and with Joe Biden.
Right. Look, there are two measures that we have of crime in the United States, two main measures.
Mhm.
The FBI counts the number of crimes reported to police, and then you have the National Crime Victimization Data, which tries to measure both the number of crimes reported to police and the number of unreported crimes through their massive 240,000 people a year survey that they do
Mhm.
in order to get a measure of total crime. And in the past, prior to 2020, those two numbers have gone together.
Yeah.
After 2020, though, they've been perfectly negatively related to each other almost. So, for example, in 2022, when the FBI number of reported crimes fell by 2%, the National Crime Victimization Data showed a 42% increase in
Wow.
violent crime.
Uh,
And they had gone in opposite directions also in 2021, where the FBI again had shown a 2% drop, and the National Crime Victimization Data showed an increase then too. So, looking at the National Crime Victimization Data, which is kind of the gold standard for looking at data because we care about total crime, not just crime reported to police. Um, During the Biden administration, it's clearly gone up and gone up substantially.
mhm.
Now, the thing
But
is,
the Biden administration, though, John, is taking that FBI number and touting that, right?
that's exactly right. That's the number that they point to. And look, there's multiple reasons why those two numbers have started going in opposite directions. And one of them you can just look at the FBI data
Mhm.
for, and that is arrests. Law enforcement in this country has collapsed. If you look at large cities, over 1 million, for example, in the 5 years before COVID, 44% of the violent crimes in those cities resulted in arrest.
Yes.
It started falling in 2020, and by 2022, it was down to only 20% of reported violent crimes resulted in arrest. Only 8% of total violent crimes result in arrest, and only 1% of total property crimes result in arrest. And so, and just because somebody's arrested doesn't mean that they're charged or prosecuted, let alone convicted.
Right.
And so, I don't know how else you can define a collapse of law enforcement. Even just looking at the FBI numbers, if that's what they want to look at,
Mhm.
shows a drop from 44% to 20%. There's never been that big of a drop, even over decades in the FBI
John,
crime data. There's
this
never
is
been that low of an arrest rate.
this is so dangerous, John, because of these numbers. I mean, we're being lulled to sleep here in thinking that crime doesn't exist. We let our guard down because we listen to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris telling us that law enforcement is doing such a great job. But if you talk to law enforcement, they'll tell you the truth, quite
Right.
clearly. And of course, you talk to your neighbor and you're hearing that, wait a minute, their car just got broken into or some other criminal act has taken place. And, it's almost like the neighborhood is just shrugging their shoulders over this deal. But, what's it going to be like, John, 5 years from now if we remain on this trajectory?
Well, I'm sure it'll be bad, but you
Yeah,
know, you see headline after headline in the mainstream media that says, crime is down, but people misleadingly think or erroneously think that crime is going up.
mm,
And my saying is that, look, I think that the media just doesn't understand how to read the crime data, and that civilians who are actually experiencing this crime have a much better handle on it. Look, if you live in a lot of major cities in this country, whether it's New York or Chicago or Los Angeles or San Francisco or DC, you go to a CVS or Walgreens store
right.
and you're going to see that their products are behind glass.
Exactly. They're all
If you
locked
want to
up.
go and buy something, you have to have a sales clerk come over, unlock the glass, stand next to you while you read the packages that are there. It's not like they're doing this for fun, putting this glass and having to have employees babysit the customers there so they don't steal things. They're doing it because they have to, because so much is being stolen. And people know that that wasn't the arrangement 3 or 4 years ago.
Of
This is
course.
a new thing that they're having to do.
Well,
And they know how costly it is. So people can see with their own eyes that something has changed in terms of crime, that criminals are getting away with a lot more crime and doing a lot more crime than they did just a few years ago. And here's the thing, you know, if you have such a huge drop in arrest rates, is it surprising that you're going to have a big increase in violent crime? That you're going to have an increase in property crime?
yeah, exactly. You
Uh,
get more of what you promote. There's no doubt about it. But John, the other part is look how overt the level of criminality. I mean,
right.
raping women in broad daylight, carjackings have gone up. I mean, when you look at all these different matrix, when you break it down, it is quite pernicious, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. We've got to slow down and go to break right now. We've got more from Dr. John Lott. Stay with us. 19 minutes after the top of the hour, Bill Martinez here, fresh and independent. Just what we'd like to hear from us as we continue to pursue the truth, no matter where it leads. This is why we so appreciate Dr. John Lott. He's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, author of Gun Control Myths. He's got nothing but the truth, the whole truth, to share with us regarding how we're being misinformed as to the criminal statistics. And of course, with this being an election season, the cabal has really circled their wagons. They want to keep us in the dark, treat us like mushrooms, as we say, just feeding us manure and doing what they do in order to cultivate mushrooms. But we can no longer stand to be mushrooms, ladies and gentlemen. This is about the consent of the government. We must, and the way we declare our consent is at the ballot box, okay? And it's imperative that we are informed. The reason we are where we are today is because we've been rather laissez-faire. Somehow we thought, okay, we'll elect these officials and they'll look out for our best interest. That's not what's happening, okay? And clearly, the fix is in on all these things. And John, this is disturbing because, as I say, with these numbers, it gives us this false sense of security, or that, oh, well, maybe we're just looking at this wrong and we need to believe these three-letter agencies, whether it's the FBI or our government, telling us that, the hijackings in our neighborhood, it's just an anomaly, that will go away, right?
Well, it's not just a question of whether believing the government agency here. We have different sources of government data. I mean, this is some data from the FBI, and then you have other data from the
Mhm.
Bureau of Justice Statistics. Both of them are in the Department of Justice. So it's not like we're saying don't believe government data. We're just saying you have to understand that the FBI data looks at crimes reported to police. The National Crime Victimization data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics looks at total crime.
Mhm.
And, I guess my question would be, who would want to just look at crimes reported to police? Don't you want to go and look at what's happening to total crime?
Right.
And, there's a reason why crime reported to police has fallen over the last few years, and that's because we've had this collapse in law enforcement. We've known for a long time that most crimes aren't reported to police. About 42% of violent crimes are reported to police, about 32% of property crimes are reported to police. And the rate that people report crimes to police depends upon whether they think anything is going to happen.
Exactly.
If you don't think people are going to be arrested or charged or convicted, what's the point of people thinking to themselves, what's the point of me going and reporting this crime?
Right. Or
Um,
worse yet, John,
but
if there's a backlash, oh, you called the police on me. They didn't do anything about me, and now all of a sudden I'm going to, the neighborhood, including myself, is going to be tormented because I thought we lived in a country of law and order.
right, well, I mean, sure. If law enforcement collapses, people are less likely to go for exactly the reason why you're saying to report crime. But
Right.
it also affects police. If police see that district attorneys are refusing to charge criminals that they have, that they immediately release them back onto the street. Police think to themselves, what's the point of me arresting these
Yeah.
guys?
Why should I risk my life?
It's
Yeah. Exactly.
right, exactly. They risk their lives and accomplish nothing. So obviously, that may only affect some police
Mhm.
and affect them to some degree, but it still has an impact and still helps explain it. Look,
Exactly.
we've had defunding the police. We've had huge numbers of retirements of police officers. So even in the last year or two, when they've gone back out and tried to hire new police officers to replace the ones that they've lost, uh, having somebody who's been on the job for 6 months or even a year doesn't replace an officer who may have had like 15 years of experience
Exactly.
that's there. And
Exactly.
so,
Mhm.
but there are lots of other problems that exist here.
Mhm.
It's not just the gap between reported and total crimes. The National Crime Victimization data also puts out its own measure of reported crimes, and those differ from the FBI. So while the FBI showed a 2% drop in violent crimes reported to police in 2022, the National Crime Victimization data showed a 29% increase in
Yeah.
reported crimes. Now, I think one of the things that's going on there is that people think simply calling 911 reports a crime to police. And the problem is that as we've had this kind of cutback in the number of police departments simply haven't had the resources to go and send out a car every time that there's somebody calls 911. And so
Exactly.
what will happen in many parts of the country is you'll call 911 and they'll say, is it an emergency? Which they mean, is the criminal
Is
there
it
right
life or death?
now
Right.
committing the crime? And
Right.
if he's not, then they're not going to send out a car. They'll say, well, you can come down to the police station and we'll fill out a report. Now,
Exactly.
that's quite different than it was a few years ago, because a few years ago, they would have sent out a police car.
Mhm.
And the problem is that you make it more costly, more difficult for people to report crimes to the police. And
Mhm.
some people who would have reported a crime to the police now aren't going to do so. And
Exactly.
so, and so you'll get now if people think that reporting, calling up 911 is reporting a crime, then you can get a lot more people saying, "Well, I called 911. I told the police." That will go into the national crime victimization data as a reported crime, but
Right.
but it doesn't go into the FBI data because simply calling 911 doesn't result in a police report being filled out.
John, help me square this up. I mean, you see Director Wray from the FBI before Congress saying, look at red lights. I see nothing but red lights. There's danger, throughout the country. And yet, these crime statistics that they're reporting in and of themselves do not seem to align with the danger that Director Wray is reporting. How do you square that up?
Well, I think Ray is talking about the threat of terrorists occurring. You know, Obviously Israel, and we've had a large number of illegals coming into the country.
Mhm.
Uh, we have something like 11 million, which have either turned themselves in or so-called gotaways, where we've actually seen them cross the border but haven't been able to catch them. But then we have unknown millions, which we don't know, we haven't seen because
Mhm.
we don't have border agents on the border, and the passive electronic equipment has been broken and hasn't been repaired. So we have large stretches of the border where we have no clue how many millions of people may have come across.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, but that all points
but
to danger.
even the ones that they know that they've let in people that are on the terror watch list, that
Mhm.
they didn't screen them and just let them into the country, and then only realize later that those were people that should have been banned. But that's no different than all the criminals. I mean, we have people who have committed murder in the United States, who committed murders in other countries. You had this guy in Brazil who had murdered 10 people in Brazil, had
Yeah.
come into the United States, and in New Hampshire murdered somebody else. You have these situations like this guy from El Salvador who murdered this mother in Maryland.
Yes.
He apparently had murdered um, someone in his own country.
Exactly.
But they let him into the United States. He was one of the ones that they processed,
Right.
but yet they didn't do a real background check on him to find out whether he had a criminal record to begin with. And so, you know, there's one simple point to make here, and that is, irregardless of these crime data and the huge increase that we've been seeing, there's no reason that we should have crime by these illegal aliens. They should have been checked. If you have
Yes.
somebody who has a violent criminal history in their own country, they should have been properly screened so that they weren't let in to begin with to go and commit crimes here in the United States.
Yeah, without a doubt. Dr. John Lott has been our guest, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. John, the website they can go to, 4 seconds, real quick.
It's crimeresearch.org,
It's time to help millions of adult
crimeresearch.org.
smokers kick the habit.